Good morning, everybody. It's the morning of June 15th, 2015, and it's raining pretty heavy here in Massachusetts, so I'm not able to do any outside work today, so I'm going to have to shift my schedule around, and since the kids are at school, I won't have any interruptions, so I figured I'd try and get some time in here on the Vernon Lathe, do some more work on that. Got my coffee going here. Tim Horton is in the dishwasher, in case anybody's wondering. No, I did not break it. What else is going on? Well, I just wanted to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Mike. Mike is here in Massachusetts, and he sent me an email the other day, and Mike's a hobby machinist, and he had been enjoying my series on the Hendy lathe, and of course the Hendy is still not finished. I don't know if you can actually see it in the back there. Right back there is the chip pan and legs assembly that I still haven't painted. And anyways, I expect within the next couple weeks I'll probably get to welding that broken chip pan leg, and that'll kind of force me to start moving in the direction of doing a little Hendy work. But right now the main focus is the Vernon. And anyways, wanted to say hi to Mike. Mike had emailed me, been watching the video he watched, particularly after watching the video where I was playing around with the 3-wire method to try and determine the size of the spindle on the Hendy there. He took it upon himself to machine out of aluminum stock a replica of the spindle on my Hendy. And then he took it a step further, and he had a, I think he said it was a dog plate laying around the shop that had a smaller opening, and once he had a test piece, he decided to bore out that dog plate and thread it apparently for the Hendy spindle. So he would like to, he's offering me those items, and since he's given him his freebies, I don't want to impose upon him to ship them. So at some point I'm going to take a trip. He's about 45 minutes to an hour away from me. I'll take a trip up there and pick those up from him. But I just figured I'd say thanks in advance for those. As I explained to him, I'm in no hurry for him because the Hendy's, not together. But the lathe dog plate always come in handy. And then, of course, the test piece. Why would you want a replica of your spindle nose on your lathe? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is it's the kind of thing that if you were going to an auction where there was chucks, and things like that, if you get that test piece with you, you could just try them in the chucks and see whether or not. Because what you're going to buy, what you're going to pay for a chuck, several things come into consideration there, obviously. But one of which is going to be whether or not it fits any of your lathes, or you're going to have to make a new back plate for it, or whatever. So that's one of the things that made me think, yeah, that'd be handy for that. The other thing that it could be handy for, and I'm just trying to think of things. If I had a chuck that I was using on the Hendy and I wanted to use it for something else, well, now I've got, basically I've got almost like an arbor that chuck will fit onto. So say I had a large rotary table and I wanted to mount that chuck on the rotary table. Well, if I machine down the OD of the back part of that so that it fits perfectly in the hole in the middle of the rotary table, now I've got an ability to put my chuck right there on the rotary table, and it's pretty well centered at that point, depending on what kind of accuracy you're willing to deal with. We're talking home hobby shop here, we're not talking NASA. Okay? Enough of my ramblings. Let's get to the Vernon. Alright, so the first thing I want to do this morning is get the lead screw back in. And I was holding off on the lead screw because of this whole felt issue. And what I decided was, I decided that rather than wait for an order from McMaster Carr for industrial felt, that I'm gonna fly by the seat of my pants and I'm gonna cut myself. I've got some felt, and it's craft felt, probably not even the right stuff. But what was in there was pretty bad. In this particular case here, where I believe, right here, where I believe that this should be a felt, there was nothing, okay? But it's kind of perplexing to me. I talked about this already, but I'm just gonna try and summarize it real quick. It's perplexing to me that what appears to be on this support for the lead screw right here is a square cut groove that sure seems to be the type you would expect to find for a flat ribbon of felt to be in. You get a ball oiler here, one of these Git or Jits ball oilers. This particular ball oiler is broken, so the ball is missing. But that doesn't change the fact that basically this, when you oil through this port, the oil's going to go right down in here. And unlike an oil groove, because that's such a wide channel, it's just asking for the oil to spill out too fast on the inside and outside here. So that's why we're thinking felt here. And based on some really old articles that I found in machinist periodicals back in the day, I guess that was common practice to actually add grooves like this on machines that didn't have it and things like that. So I don't know whether this was added later or what the intention was of the manufacturer here. We're never going to know. The reason why it's so perplexing to me is because why do it here and then ignore this shaft? Now this is the shaft that the tumbler moves back and forth on. So initially I thought, well, it doesn't have to really be that lubricated. But then, it occurred to me, wait a minute, I'm not thinking correctly, because this shaft is always rotating. Because the way it works is there's a gear on the end of that shaft outboard. That's driving the shaft. And then the tumbler has a spline gear on it that's going to move up and down a spline in that shaft, so that gear is being driven off of this shaft. Then the gear is raised up against whichever one of the gears in this cone of gears to select your quick change. But this bore right here, not only does it not have a square cut groove like this, it has absolutely no groove whatsoever. All there is at the end of this is at the end of this oiler is a big hole. So the oil's gonna come out of there and just go right onto that. Now, it did occur to me that maybe what's going on here is maybe, I'm going to have to pull that shaft to look at it, but maybe the groove on the shaft, or the spline on the shaft, is supposed to be what the oil will work its way into and be transferred around by. I don't, if that's what the intention was, I don't necessarily think that's a great idea, great way to handle it, but that may be very well what they were doing there. Alright, well, now that I look at the end of the shaft, I look at how that keyway is cut. That's pretty much like the same size as the slot that was cut on this upper part. So I'm thinking, why not put a felt right in here, and then that'll basically do the same job. Because right now, again, problem is, if I just put this in here the way it is, nothing in there, the oil, as the shaft comes around to this part, oil's going to flow right into this shaft, right into this groove, and want to flow out. Now, if it flows out in this direction, it's going to just drip out the end and make a mess over here on the casting. Interestingly, though, if it flows out in this direction, that would actually cause it to lubricate this groove. Nah, that doesn't make sense, because the tumbler has its own oiler on it. the tumbler has a place on it for oil to flow right down and lubricate its movement up and down this shaft. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with felt here. Felt in that other groove. So that turns us to this side of the housing, where the end of the very end of the lead screw would ride, and then also the end of that shaft comes out, has the gears that drive it. Well, on this side for the lead screw, there is no wide groove for felt. There's a V groove, narrow V groove, which doesn't look like it would be good for having felt, holding felt in place at all. And this has got this port right on top here that lines up when the tray's in position with a Git ball oiler. So the oil goes right down here, migrates along that groove, and lubricates this end right here. Well, the only thing I could figure is, because the lead screw is supported at the far end and it's supported here, maybe they don't think there's much stress on this, so it's not as critical for this to be kept lubricated. But that, I don't know, that seems silly to me. So I don't know what they were thinking there, why the design's so different over here. I haven't looked at the end of the lead screw yet, but the very end of the lead screw I don't think has a slot in it. Now, alright, the very end of the lead screw is just solid. So they got an oil groove in there and that's it. So, who knows what they were thinking. Then the bottom one, that's going to have some stress on it because you got this gear outboard right here. So you've got, this should be well lubricated. What oils that is, you got an oil hole here that a tube drips oil into. The tube is part of the housing here that covers these gears. And this has got the same deal. It's just got this little V groove. So I'm holding the camera facing up from the bottom. So you're actually looking at the top right there. That groove sits actually in its top right here. And I don't know if it's showing up very good on the video, but that's actually just a V groove. See if I can get the light up closer. There we go. So you can see it's just a little notch V groove. And that's on the lower boss that supports the end of the shaft that's driven by the gear. And then we got the same thing in the and there's the upper one. And I'm going to clean that out. There's a little bit of garbage in there. It's not felt, it's just some crud. Alright, here's the tumbler assembly, or whatever you want to call it. And I just finished running this through the parts washer and cleaning it up, and getting pretty clean. But I think I'm gonna remove, it looks like there's two set screws here that will allow me to remove this shaft and take this gear out, just in case there's any crud trapped beneath there. And more importantly, I want to investigate exactly how this is supposed to be oiled, because the tube goes right into the end here, so clearly that oil is going to go in there. There's probably an oil groove inside here that's going to take care of the shaft as the gear rides on it. So this shaft is fixed. I can see that there's indentations on the shaft that the set screws go into. So once it's in there, it only goes in one way. It stays that way. Okay, so we got a regular standard old oil groove there. So the oil is going to travel along that oil groove, and that's what's going to keep this oiled. But question I have, well, first thing I want to do is, you can see there's a big chunk of stuff stuck right there. Alright, first I'm going to look and make sure this gear. Alright, so I'm going to leave this on the bench, this side facing up, going towards the oil tube. I guess I'll hit this in the parts washer again because the sides of the gear have some crud on it. Not that that's going to affect the performance, but it could come off and get into someplace where it shouldn't be. Oh, so what I started to say was, so that's what's going to lubricate this gear as it runs on this shaft. But there doesn't seem to be any provisions for oil to get down onto this shaft at this gear. Well, the shaft that goes through here is, of course, the shaft that I just showed you that's going to go through the machine. So maybe oil is supposed to migrate along that long groove in order to get over here and oil these areas right here. Don't know. Well, I can't believe it, but it's already 12:31 in the afternoon, and I haven't really done, well, on the video it doesn't seem like I've done much, but I've been actually busy cleaning a lot of parts. I've also been cleaning some parts not associated with what I'm working on right at the moment. I just finished cleaning this this shaft, and I discovered that underneath it, it's got a 61 stamped into it. So that's another number that doesn't coincide with the other stuff, so this might be a part number. So far, the only numbers I found stamped on this machine is several 13s, including one where the serial number should be, a 25 on the apron, and now a 61 here on this this shaft for the counter shaft assembly for the back gear. Alright, guess I'll reassemble this. This seems awfully stiff. Well, that's not where it's binding. Just these surfaces right here have a little bit of grime built up on them, maybe, I don't know. Alright. I meant to clean this one. Oh yeah. That made all the difference in the world. Surprising to me how that still kind of rubs. Good enough. Alrighty. So now I go to I'm going to cut me a strip of felt to go in here, hopefully, with some measure of success. Well, this felt is thin, so I'm going to actually cut one strip. I'm going to cut a second strip though. First strip I cut with scissors, and I don't like the way it turned out, so I'm going to try the straight edge with a utility knife for the second strip. Tougher to cut than I thought it would be. Alright, the utility knife doesn't work very well. Blade looks good, but maybe a new blade would have helped. These scissors feel sharp, but didn't work well. They cut, but they're a little hard to handle. Fiskars to the rescue. My little Fiskars pair of cutters right here were just a trick. Now I eyeballed this width here. I got it pretty good. So when I stack it up double like that,
This is going to be just a little bit proud, but that's exactly what I want. I want it to be proud of the top of the shaft so that the felt isn't going to be in contact with the actual bore. So the trick here now is going to be to get this to go in. And actually I just realized I probably should have... I should probably put this in. Yeah, I'm going to put this in through the first bore and through the tumbler, the change lever assembly or whatever, and then install my little strips here. So we'll try that. I guess I could just slap this right on here, huh? I wonder if I'm missing any parts. The spacer was already in there. I know that belonged in there. Yeah, maybe that's it. Then I have a problem with this where I had to make sure this is pulled out a certain amount. Alright. Now I probably should have checked to see what kind of wicking property that wick has, that felt has. We'll just think positive thoughts. Oh man, I gotta get another oiler. All I end up doing is making the puke oil out all around outside here instead of going down inside. I don't seem to understand the operation principle on this, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure that comes with the territory, wiping down the outside of the lathe after you oil it, right? Hey, I can actually see the oil dampening that felt. Not bad. For what it's worth. Pop quiz. What did I miss? I'll give you a hint. It has teeth. It's a small gear. Right now this shaft is turning and not engaging anything on that movable part there. Because this is still in the parts washer. Well, so much for that. Actually, I could leave that gear on. Just take this cap, this end container off. Gonna have to take my oily felt out. Why is that, you may ask? Well, quite frankly, because the gear that I have to put in has to gear that I have to put in there has to go on the spline shaft, and I don't think it's going to go over that felt, even though that's a smaller diameter on there. Nope. Alright, so yeah, pull my felt out. I almost did it again. I started to put this gear on. This gear has to sit sandwiched in here.
as long as I got the felts out, I guess I'll pre-wet them. Appears to me that this one's too long. Anyways, I guess I'll fix that. I gotta put these in one at a time. Stacking doesn't work. Ah, come on. It's worked the first time I did it. Oh, you know what I think the first time I used the screwdriver to hold it down. Yep! Now that the felt is oily, it slides in the groove too easily. And so that's causing difficulty in getting it in there. Boy, it's funny though. That was so stiff and hard to move. Now that thing moves smooth as glass. Clean the handle. Broken handle. Alright, so I just cleaned up this handle. This is the handle that was on here when I got the lathe, and it's broken. Part here is obviously snapped off. And this part was kind of like a spoon shape or contoured part of the handle. So you could squeeze this, and then it had a tang that stuck down on the bottom that helped keep one end of the spring captive. The other end of the spring sat down in this hole. So I'd love to replace this. A while back I was talking to one of the guys on the PM website, and he had said they had scrapped the 14-inch cone head Hendy, I believe. And he says he thinks the handles might still be around there, but that was a while ago. So I'm going to try and reach out to him and see whether or not he's got them. I just took measurements of the handle from basically the overall length of the handle. So this is apparently this is a not that unusual handle for the Norton type gearbox, because when I first saw these handles in the advertisement when I was looking at this lathe on Craigslist, that's what made me think Hendy. But I don't think they're unique to Hendy, or maybe they are, so much as unique to the Norton gearbox. I don't know if earlier South Bends had a handle like this or not. The other thing that's interesting to me is this almost looks like it's bent, but I can't tell whether or not, I mean, for it to have bent like that, then it would have had to, yeah, I guess the lathe fell and this hit something, could have bent it like that. So that's kind of interesting to me. That would, this being bent, would change the distance, centerline distance of this rod to this pin, which oddly enough would actually affect how high or, I wonder if that's actually affecting the mesh of the gears any. Well, anyways, this is just over 5 inches, I think. Kind of a long shot, if anybody out there knows where I can get one of these handles. Worst case scenario is if I can't find one reasonably priced or free for that matter, then I'll probably at some point down the road hopefully get the milling machine up and running and fix this. My thinking is I could mill off this broken area right here to give me a nice flat and fabricate a new piece of brass. I guess it doesn't necessarily even have to be brass. I could make something to fix this handle. And then I might even swap this handle. I think it's identical to the handle on the 3-speed gearbox. Oh, which is right here. The box wasn't so heavy I'd pick it up to show you. But the point is, I think this is the one I would change more often if I'm going to change any of them. So anyways, for right now I'm going to put this one back in. So you can see now this was really stiff before.
Now it's working nice and smooth.